before we do, let me ask you about Peter Dutton saying that the Prime Minister should apologise to the organiser of the domestic violence rally, given the dispute over who was invited to speak and not speak and so on. He was accused of lying, the PM. Peter Dutton says he should apologise. What do you make of that? Should he?
Oh, I just think this is breathtaking that Peter Dutton has gone here on this question. I mean, let's just take a step back again, Kieran. We saw a tragic incident occur in the last couple of weeks, which has seen a spontaneous movement, really, where thousands of Australians have marched in support of security for women over the course of the weekend. One of those who marched in support of that cause was Anthony Albanese. Someone who did not march in support of that cause was Peter Dutton. And Peter Dutton wasn't at a rally. The idea that Peter Dutton is out there criticising the Prime Minister in circumstances where the Prime Minister stood up and marched on this issue on the weekend and Peter Dutton didn't is completely breathtaking. But the other point to make here, Kieran, ultimately this is actually not about Anthony Albanese and it's not about Peter Dutton. It's about the security of women in this country. This is not a matter which should be politicised. And yet that's exactly where Peter Dutton went as quickly as he could, because he seeks to politicise everything. I mean, surely the security of women is a bipartisan issue. Now, the Prime Minister has demonstrated leadership here. There will be a national cabinet tomorrow, which he has convened straight away in order to specifically deal with this. It is utterly unacceptable that we have a situation where a woman has died at a rate of more than one a week this year in relation to this kind of violence. That is totally unacceptable, and we need to see action. And Anthony Albanese is demonstrating that with the leadership that he's shown, and the National Cabinet will be meeting on this. Peter Dutton actually was nowhere to be seen on the weekend, and that is the fact which defines Peter Dutton here.
Deputy Prime Minister, the PM, or the outgoing PM of the Solomon Islands, it's a significant development there. Manasseh Sogavare had poor results at the recent election in the Solomons. He is seen as the most pro-China leader in the Pacific. Do you welcome the fact that he's going to be replaced as Prime Minister of our neighbour?
Oh, well, look, I'm not about to comment on the internal affairs of another country, and certainly I'm not about to comment on the internal affairs of Solomon Islands. Australia was very pleased to be able to play a part in facilitating the elections in Solomon Islands, which we did, and we often do provide support for the logistics around the holding of elections in the Pacific. But the outcome of those elections are a matter for Solomon Islands, and as happens in their system, there is the election day, those who get elected to the parliament, and then there is a process by which a government will be formed in Solomon Islands. I think the point I'd simply make there is, no matter who forms government, we will seek to be the partner of choice, and we will work hard with the new government of Solomon Islands to earn that trust, as we did.
Does it diminish China's influence?
As we've done with governments previously. Well, again,
does the result diminish China's
It's hard to answer that question without weighing into Solomon Islands politics, which I'm not going to do. I simply say that whoever forms government in Solomon Islands, we will seek to be their partner of choice, and we will work very hard to earn that trust.
On Ukraine, you've committed the government another $100 million. The US has also committed a significant amount. I just wonder, are defence planners looking at the situation there and weighing up the prospect that Donald Trump could and likely, according to a lot of polls, will win in November, and the prospect that he'll pull the pin on support?
Well, I mean, obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the American elections, and given the nature of America in the world, the American elections are clearly a significant event, and people think about that. But I think the important point to make is that this is a really critical time for Ukraine. It really matters that the world is standing up on behalf of Ukraine now. I mean, it has mattered from the day that Russia engaged in its appalling invasion of Ukraine, but it particularly matters now. that's why we felt it was important to not only make this next announcement or next tranche of support that we did, but to actually go to Ukraine and make the announcement there. I think the package that has passed the United States Congress, package that was announced by the United Kingdom, there's a package from Denmark, and obviously our own, all of it coming in a short period of time is a real fillip for Ukraine. It is a boost in morale. I mean, particularly the American package is going to make a very significant difference in their ability to be able to prosecute the war and their interest in the war. But ultimately, this is an existential conflict for Ukraine, and Ukraine must be able to resolve this conflict on its terms, and we will stand with Ukraine for as long as that takes, irrespective of what happens in the rest of the world.
Just on that money, the 100 million, is it out of the existing Australian defence budget, or is it extra on top of that out of general revenue?
No, this is a contribution from defence, but it is a significant contribution of 100 million, and we will continue to look at ways in which we will support. This by no means is the end of our contributions to Ukraine, of course. I mean, what I think in part, in answer to your previous question, the way we are thinking about it in terms of our own planning is that this is going to be a long, drawn-out, enduring conflict, and we need to be there over the long term. And so we will be, we are thinking about how we can continue to provide support as we have done up until this point in time. So this is simply the
Does it mean cuts out of our own defence, though?
Commitment to support.
Does that mean cuts out of our own defence in order to boost Ukraine?
Well, no. Well, Kieran, I think the point to make here is, as we've said before, Defence's budget is expanding significantly. I mean, when we announced the National Defence Strategy, what will be in this year's budget over the next 4 years represents as big an increase in defence spending over a 4-year period as has happened in decades. And that's measured in billions of dollars. And we are seeing an additional $50 billion over the next 10 years relative to what we inherited when we came to office. So there are very, very significant increases in defence spending, which are of a historic scale. Part of our focus, needs to be on what is happening in the world. I mean, we are very much focused on our region, as we should be. That's what the Defence Strategic Review asked us to be. But you cannot be focused on the region without having an eye to the world. And clearly, what is playing out in Ukraine does have an impact on the way in which the global rules-based order is maintained everywhere in the world, including in our part of the world. So this is an appropriate commitment in terms of Australia's defence. It is appropriate commitment in terms of Australia's national interest, and there will be more commitments going forward.
Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles, I appreciate your time as always. Thanks.
Thanks, Kieran.